Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be reacting to some scary stories. I know we've been reacting to scary, video games, but let's try to get a little more serious. But guys, don't forget, please like the video and please subscribe if you want to see more content from me. It really, really helps me out. Anyways, let's get right into the video. Okay.
On May 8th, 2025, a Reddit
Let's
user
get
asked
into
a
it.
grim yet straightforward question on r/AskReddit, stating, "What is the most messed up thing you have ever done?"
Ooh.
Initially, replies to this were filled with either obvious jokes or relatively
bullied
tame
someone.
confessions involving relationship drama. However, after about 30 minutes of the post being live, one user replied with a disturbing comment that stood out from the rest.
What?
It read, "I ran over a woman and her child in California in '96.
Oh my god.
I don't remember the specific city, but I'll never forget it was the intersection between Vanawin Street and Lewis Avenue. I think the mom died, but I don't remember what happened to the kid. I got away scot-free, and I'm only telling this because the statute of limitations already passed."
Wow.
Now, it's not uncommon for people to just
terrible.
make up shocking stories on Reddit for
That's
attention.
terrible.
And at first, this didn't look any different until
Wow.
another user did some digging
Oh
and
my
discovered
God.
an LA Times article from July
It
of
actually
1996
happened.
about what seemed like the same incident mentioned in the comment.
It actually
That article,
happened.
along with others from the time, not only confirmed the OP's claims, but
Oh
also
my
revealed the horrifying
God.
details of what actually happened that day. According to the reports, the victims of this incident were a 19-year-old girl named
Oh
Ruby
my
Moreno and her
goodness.
1-year-old
So
daughter.
young.
Ruby had taken her daughter to a nearby hospital on the morning of July 29 to treat a few minor cuts she got while playing. She stopped at a relative's house on Vanawin Street on her way back and was about to return home at around 10 p.m. But as she was attempting to
It
get
was
into her car on the
late.
driver's side, she heard a loud screeching noise from behind.
Wow.
She looked back and saw a car barreling towards her at 100 miles per hour.
100 miles?
According to other witnesses, this car had swerved to avoid hitting a van just seconds earlier, causing it to lose control. Seeing this, Ruby panicked and started running from the speeding car with her daughter still in her arms.
No.
Unfortunately, luck wasn't on her side that day. Before she could reach the sidewalk, she tripped into the street and was struck by the car moments later.
Wow.
The impact sent her flying over a parked car and onto the roof of another. The baby was also tossed several feet into the air before falling on the asphalt. Miraculously, the baby didn't receive any lethal injuries and was able to survive without any lasting damage to her body. Ruby, however, wasn't as fortunate. She was rushed to the hospital but succumbed to her injuries the same night. As for the driver that hit her, witnesses reported him trying to flee the scene, hitting another parked car and then a curb before successfully
Jesus
getting away.
Christ.
And from everything I could find,
guy's
the perpetrator was
terrible.
never identified or arrested.
That is that
so
guy.
if this Reddit user was telling the truth, there's a real chance he was the driver behind the brutal hit and run nearly 3 decades ago. The report from 1996 also mentioned that the driver was likely intoxicated due to the way he behaved after hitting Ruby.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And when asked, the user admitted that this was the case.
Oh my God.
Were you drunk at the time, as the article says, or were they wrong about that? Inebriated, sure. More high than drunk. I was on a lot of junk back there. But
Look
the
at
most disturbing part of his
negative
confession was
upvotes.
just how cold and
Or the
remorseless he
downvotes.
seemed about the entire incident.
Yeah, downvote
Why
his
no
ass.
sympathy? Was this on purpose?
Downvote his
No,
ass.
but it's been so long. It's like a whisper of a memory. Do you
For
think
you!
about how that child has
For
to live without a mother
you!
now? Genuinely asking, you seem stone cold.
No, seriously.
It's been 30 years. That child probably has children of its own. I seem stone cold because I've already been through all the stages of emotions. I've justified myself, I rotted with guilt, I've had sleepless nights.
30 years
I'm an
is
old
crazy.
man now and I'm waiting to die any moment. I can't change what I did. I
30
can't even pay for my
years.
crime anymore because California doesn't send people to prison only on a confession. And regardless, my health alone would render me incompetent to stand trial. There's nothing tying me back to that day but my word.
Sure.
Which brings us to the big question. Was the OP
Dude, I
actually
would
telling
downvote the
truth?
hell out of this guy.
Unfortunately, the answer to this is a bit more complicated than it initially seems.
Oh,
For
really?
starters, his story does match an actual incident that happened back in 1996, right down to the exact intersection he mentioned in his confession.
Is it not him?
He also added several details that didn't seem made up, and even gave a reason for why he was finally willing to confess now, because the statute of limitations had long expired. That said, there also seems to be some
I
consistencies.
think it is him.
Some reports claim the driver was with another passenger, and that they actually fled on foot. However, the OP not only didn't mention any passenger, but also claimed that he still had the car. He even cited
He
its
still had
damaged
the car?
condition as the reason he became aware of the accident, writing, "What was your reaction to what happened? I was
Yeah.
too hopped up on various types of drugs to notice. It was only the day after when I saw the dried blood on my bumper.
That's the
This
only
could
way you
point to the
knew?
possibility that the OP
No
wasn't behind Ruby's
way.
accident at all. He maybe stumbled upon the 1996 article online, memorized key details like the year and the street name to make it seem real, and then fabricated the rest of the story
That's
as users pressed him with more
terrible.
questions. All just to get some attention on the internet. But at the end of the day, we don't
That's
know.
terrible.
Although if he was telling the truth,
I don't know.
several users have already alerted California authorities of his comments.
They're like, get his ass, get his ass. That is a crazy story.
In May of 2012, a Reddit user asked others to share a
story
secret which,
time.
if came out, could ruin their lives.
Oh,
And
this
while
is
this
a good
post
one.
received over
This is a
44,000
good
comments in total,
one.
one chilling
Ooh, tell me.
confession stood out above the rest.
Tell me.
About 9 hours after the original post went up, a user replied with a haunting story of his own, reading, I accidentally killed 7 people. I put a rag into a new water heater exhaust to keep debris out and installed it in a rental. I get a call a week
7?
later. There's been an accident. I show up and there's a ton of EMS and police. They ask me where the
7
gas shutoff is, and I go down to
people.
shut the gas off and see the end of the rag I forgot sticking out of the top of the heater.
Oh my god, he
Rip the
forgot
rag
about
out,
the
shut the gas
rag.
off, and headed upstairs, only to be told all the tenants were dead. I drink all day now and sleep. It's killing me from the inside every
That
single
is
day.
terrible.
But if I say anything,
But is
my
it
family is
true?
ruined. We have a bunch of rental properties and we'd be shut down.
Is it true
This reply
though?
caught the attention of thousands of other users who
7
wanted more
people?
details on what exactly happened. Unfortunately for them, the account that posted this was a throwaway, and the OP didn't post a single comment after that, possibly to avoid incriminating himself any further. But when users didn't get the answers they were looking for from the OP, they began looking outward. And
Ooh,
it
what'd
didn't
they
take long
find?
for someone to track down the news article talking about the tragic accident. According to these reports, the incident took place on December 16, 2006, in Kirksville, Missouri,
2006.
where 7 victims, including 5
Wow,
young adults and
that's
2
what-
children, passed away in their
2
sleep due to carbon
children, too?
monoxide poisoning. However,
It's
while this part
true.
matched what the OP said in his comment, the conclusion the investigators reached was completely different.
Oh,
In his
what was
report,
it?
the police chief superheading the investigation stated that the heating system was functioning properly and was not the source of any problem. Instead, one of the victims' vans was left running in the closed garage. This generated a lot of carbon monoxide throughout the night, which slowly filled up the apartment and eventually ended up taking the resident's
Oh.
life. So, did the OP really get away with killing 7 innocent people because of his gross negligence?
Okay.
Sadly, the answer is not as clear-cut as many would
One
hope.
decade,
There are
3
multiple
years ago is
possibilities, and any one of
crazy.
them could be true. For instance, if we assume that OP was telling the truth from his perspective, it's completely possible that the accident did have nothing to do with the heating system.
Yeah.
But since the OP saw the rag stuck in the heater, he assumed it was his fault and has been blaming
It
himself
was
ever
never
since.
his fault.
On the other hand, there's also a chance that everything unfolded exactly as the investigation
That's
concluded.
crazy.
OP just took
If
this
that-
real accident
wow.
and made up the story about him forgetting the rag for attention on Reddit. This
Or
would also
that.
explain why the police would let him casually walk into a
Or
potential
that. I
crime
forget
scene
people
without
lie
any
on Reddit.
supervision. We can even take this a step further and
Or
assume that
that.
the OP wasn't even the landlord and just read about the incident online. That all said, it's still completely possible this story is legit and that the rag was the cause of the deaths, or perhaps a combination of the van and the
Yeah,
rag.
maybe.
The OP hasn't posted any new updates on his throwaway account in the last 13
13 years ago.
So whatever the truth is,
Yeah, he's
we
long
may never
gone.
know for sure.
He is not coming back. So that's crazy. So
On
he
May
could be
2nd,
blaming himself for
2017,
that.
Users on the Canada
Insane.
News subreddit came across a lengthy post titled, Wanted for Kitchener Murder, My Side.
My
This was a
side.
reference to a horrific murder that took place in Kitchener, Canada just a few
I do
days
not
earlier.
gotta hear your side.
And to everyone's
Murderer.
shock, this post was written by the prime suspect, Ager Hassan. He was still on the run, but wanted to
My
tell the
side.
internet what exactly happened on the night of the incident.
My
However,
side.
what seemed like a desperate attempt to share his side of the story would later turn out to be a part of his plan to evade the consequences for his actions.
Oh,
Though
how
the events
so?
that led up to this started 15 months earlier in February of 2016, when 21-year-old Ager Hussein met 21-year-old Melinda Vasilier in Kitchener. The two quickly became infatuated with one another and began dating just weeks after their first encounter. However, while things went quite
Yeah,
well
what's
for
going
the
on? What
first year or
happened?
so, the two eventually started bickering and fighting with each other. This resulted in the two breaking up in April 2017 via text, and that's when things took a turn for the worse. Not long after their breakup, Ager attempted to break into Melinda's home through her patio, but was spotted by her
Oh
friend
my
Anna and her
God.
boyfriend. They also called the police on him, forcing him to leave Melinda alone. However, he
Crazy.
kept texting her even after this incident, asking to meet her at least one last time. She
Oh,
eventually
heck
agreed
no.
and invited him to her home,
No,
hoping to talk
don't.
things through and end the relationship on respectful terms.
No.
They decided to meet on the night of April 27th,
No.
but when the time came, Adrian didn't show up. Melinda had asked her friend and sister to stay with her at home while Adrian was visiting. However, since Adrian was a no-show, she gave them the go-ahead to carry on with their night, and the two left. They returned shortly after midnight, and to their surprise, discovered that Adrian had shown up while they were gone and was now in Melinda's room with her. The girls confirmed Melinda's safety before heading off again to get food.
Okay,
This
she seems
trip
fine.
took barely 30 minutes, but by the time they came back, things had somehow spiraled into a complete nightmare. The apartment was in complete disarray, and there was no sign of Adrian anywhere.
Oh my God.
And as they stepped further into the apartment, they found Melinda lying face down on the kitchen floor in a pool of blood, with her body covered in dozens of wounds.
That is
They
terrible.
rushed in to check on her, but tragically, it was already too late.
I would feel so
Melinda
guilty.
had no pulse. After composing
feel
themselves, they
so
contacted the
guilty.
police and told them everything they knew, sparking a nationwide manhunt for Adrian.
That is
However, despite days
terrible.
of searching, the investigators were unable to find anything about his current whereabouts. That is until a
This is
post
my
from Adrian
side.
himself popped up on Reddit explaining everything that happened from his
so
perspective. He opened his
infuriating.
monologue by going over the history of his and Melinda's relationship, how they were perfect together, and that he was even planning on proposing to her before everything fell apart.
They were only
After
together
spending
for
a bit
year.
more time going over the timeline of the relationship, he moved on to talking about the day of the incident. And according to him, this is what happened after Melinda's friend and sister checked up on them.
Yeah, what
We
happened?
continued to talk and finally decided it was worth it to try one more time.
Okay.
Anna and her other friend left the house to grab food. We both let everything out and our relationship was back on track.
But something
As I'm getting ready
happens.
to leave, she asked me if I had done anything with any other girls while we were on a break, or any time we were on a break. I told her we needed to be honest and said yes and told her about it. She started freaking out, wouldn't say a word, just kept slapping me with tears in her eyes. Slaps turned into hits. I told her I was sorry, but if she didn't stop, I'd do something back. She didn't stop. I then stupidly pushed her, harder than I expected. She fell against the sink. This was the first time I ever did something physically violent towards her. I told her I was sorry.
You did more than that.
She said, leave now.
You did more than that,
I began saying
though.
sorry even more and asked if I could get a hug. She
Oh,
was still
hell
crying.
no.
I go up to her to
Can
try
I get
and
a
give her
hug?
Almost out of nowhere, she
Where
grabs
my
a
hug
knife from
at?
the sink. Initially, I thought she was just going to hold it
Oh
to try
my
and tell me to
God.
leave. She
Sure,
doesn't.
bud.
She comes at me full force, aiming towards my face. I tell her to stop. She doesn't. I tried grabbing the knife, but ended up cutting my hands. After a few cuts, I lost it. I freaked out. I was
I don't
scared and
believe
in a
him.
state of shock. Never in 100 years did I think she would use a knife against me. Out of shock and fear, I grabbed one. I hit her with it, almost blindly, a few times. I didn't know what happened. I was confused,
Yeah, sure.
shocked, and scared.
I didn't know what
I had no
happened.
intentions of that happening. When I left, I honestly thought she just passed out. Then I looked at the blood and started freaking out and just ran. I didn't know for sure she had died until the next day. I honestly had no intention of ever doing that to her. I was protecting myself.
I do not
From
believe
there,
this.
he went on to talk about the amount of regret and sadness he was feeling for what
I don't
happened to
believe it.
Melinda. He also expressed his shock over the news, calling this a targeted attack. Now, on their own, these look like the words of a man desperately trying to clear his name after an accident, when in reality, every word in this post was carefully selected by Adrian to make himself look as innocent as possible.
Yep.
For
I didn't
instance,
know
he
what
claimed that Melinda often
happened.
slapped and hit him near the beginning of his story, so that it doesn't seem suspicious when he mentions it later. When, according to people who knew her, Melinda was extremely sweet and had no violent tendencies. Adrian also downplayed the break-in attempt, claiming
Try
he
to blame
merely
the
visited her
victim.
house to talk.
Someone
And
that
even
can't
left out
defend
the part about
themselves.
Melinda getting a restraining order against him following that incident. He also mentioned that he swung his knife just a few times in self-defense. When in reality, autopsy results showed a staggering 47 different wounds on her body.
What a
Luckily, by this point,
liar.
the police
What a
knew that he crossed the border
liar.
a few hours later and was now hiding in the U.S. And while it did take them a few weeks to pinpoint his location,
Get
they
his
were eventually able
ass.
to arrest and charge him with the murder of his once girlfriend.
Terrible.
Further investigation
Terrible.
also revealed other twisted methods he tried to seem more innocent.
What do you
Like
do?
sending a message to Melinda saying, "Nice seeing you tonight. Glad we worked things out. Anyways, see you soon." Hours after committing the crime. He stood
He
trial
is
on
so
October 2023,
guilty.
where
What
the
the
jury
heck?
concluded his motive boiled down to, "If I
That
can't
is
have
so-
you, no one can."
That is
He
so
was given
twisted.
a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 16 years.
16? Make it 6 million. Make it 6 million. I never
On
want to
June
see his
7,
face.
2019, a throwaway account made a post on the Confession subreddit claiming to be responsible for the deaths of
Okay.
several people.
We heard this
The
one
post
before.
opened with the open
second
talking
one.
about his life goal 4 years ago, how he didn't get stuck in a 9-to-5 cycle. So he came up with a different business plan, selling substances.
Oh,
However, this really didn't work out as well as he'd hoped. He hated meeting people in person and was constantly afraid of someone finding out who he was and where he lived. But then he
okay.
learned about a popular marketplace for illicit substances on the dark web and started
Oh
using
no.
that to conduct business.
Not the
Things
dark
were going
web.
well, and even
Not
upgraded
the
from
dark
selling just
web.
3 substances to shipping several much more potent options as well. Unfortunately, what started
What,
as
the
a major boom
overdose?
for his business turned into a massive disaster when he accidentally sent the wrong items for a few orders, stating, I put all my addresses into an Excel spreadsheet along with their name, zip code, order, along with the amount.
I think that's what
At the time, I
happens.
was selling some super white powdered the
Oof.
was also a white powder. Very similar consistency. Long story short, my Excel messed up or I
Hardcore.
messed up, and about 7 people's orders were filled in as orders. They all went
Oh
out. I didn't
no.
notice and kept doing my thing for a few days. After about 5 days, someone contacted me and told me their friend died from my I immediately called BS and
Wow.
went to check my order log and scale up how much I had of my left. Well, I had about 11 grams more than I should have. I still don't know how it could have happened. I wasn't a user, but I definitely was high. Put simply, the OP accidentally
Wow.
sent a much harder substance to his customers. And while I can't mention its name on YouTube, it is known to be extremely lethal in even relatively
Yeah.
small quantities.
I actually know
He
what it
later
is.
searched the names of these customers
I just
online and
know,
discovered
you
that at
know?
least 5 of them had passed away due to his mistake. The
Five
sheer gravity of his
people.
actions prompted him to immediately abandon the drug trade and rebuild his life, stating, I immediately deactivated my vendor account. I didn't even need confirmation. I knew what happened.
Play stupid
I knew I
games,
just
win
killed
stupid
several
prizes. But I
people.
mean, I still
I
feel
sold the
bad
rest
for
of
the
my
people,
drugs, converted
obviously.
my Bitcoin to cash, and moved away.
But
Didn't
this
speak to
guy,
anyone
like,
for weeks.
you're
Found a
selling
job
this
in a
to
restaurant,
people.
living in a city I always wanted to.
Like, this is the
I haven't touched
risk.
drugs since that day. I haven't had anything to do with that life since then. However, the OP ended the post by claiming that, despite getting as far away from his old life as he possibly could, the guilt of being responsible for so many lost lives still weighs heavily on him, and that the only reason
Yeah.
he confessed everything on Reddit was to finally get it off his chest, hoping it might bring him some
Yeah.
sense of relief. Now, whether
Like I
this
said,
actually helped
like,
him
you
feel
put
any
yourself in
better or
those
not is
positions.
completely
Like,
unknown. This was his first and last post from this
ah,
account, and he hasn't posted any updates since. As for if
that's
he was actually telling the
terrible.
truth, that much is uncertain. It's near
Yeah,
impossible
he
for me
could
to
be
track down
lying.
any news
He
articles
could
about
be.
his unfortunate customers, given that over 100,000 people
Yeah.
every year lose their
See?
lives from that same substance. That
Ah,
said, many users in
terrible.
the comments believe the story was genuine, and some even expressed
Yeah,
sympathy
it
for
kind of
the
sounds
OP's
genuine.
situation. Though I doubt we'll get any concrete answer on this confession's legitimacy anytime soon.
Wow, these stories were crazy. Let me know what y'all think in the comments.